Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Vedic Living. Today, we are going to talk about the predictions for the month of September. This is going to be an intense ending to the year 2024. A lot of difficult transits are going to happen in the sky, and there's going to be some positive to all this too, and we'll talk about all that. But before we go forward, I do want to remind you about my website, www.vedicliving.com. Make sure you go on my website, sign up for the free newsletter that I send out every month with a lot of detailed predictions for the upcoming month, and it's free. So make sure you sign up for that. Now, I know a lot of you commented on my past video saying that you cannot see the chart that I pull up here on the side, and it's too small to read. So what I'm going to do today is something a little different. I'm going to share the chart itself. So I will be in a smaller box. I think one of you suggested that. So thank you for that suggestion. I'll be in a smaller kind of box on the side, but you will see a much bigger chart and you will see what I'm talking about. So I hope that's what you wanted, and I hope that helps. But as always, sound off in the comments. Let me know what I can do to make things better, or if there's any improvements you would like, because this is all for you. I want you to be able to learn this, understand this, and use astrology to understand the energies that are coming up and live a better life. When we are aware of what's coming up, we are much better equipped to deal with it. So, astrology is just the planetary motions are always cyclic. Everything that's happening now has happened before. That's why, as astrologers, we do the research and we go back in time and we say, oh, this is the last time this happened, and here's what happened back then. So, with the cyclic nature of astrology, the research is very important. So that's why I want to make sure that you're able to see the chart and what I'm saying, because a lot of what I do because of my love for astrology and my love for teaching. I love teaching. So I hope, this, helps with the feedback that you gave, and you're able to see a much better, bigger chart this time. And, we'll talk about everything that's coming up in this month. Now, before we go into the month of September, I do want to say that this upcoming period of 6 months is going to be very intense in the world. Okay. We will be looking at countries and people that are impacted, because the eclipse that's coming up end of September and early October, we are going to have 2 eclipses. And remember, I always tell you, eclipse energy is not just for that day. It's a 6-month journey. Okay. So that's why I said 6 months, because from October till April of next year, we will see all of these things happening. And I will make a separate video on the eclipses just because I want to focus more on that. But when I talk about September, I kind of have to talk about the eclipse too, because, the lunar eclipse happens in the end of September. But putting all of that aside, I want to go to a 1,000-feet view of all this, right? This is a time of major changes and renewal. I was looking for the right word because, with everything that's happening, you have to remember there is a positive here. Even though we see everything getting shook up, with politics and technology and countries and wars, at the end of all this, there's going to be a renewal. And I have always told you guys that whatever is happening now is a precursor to the year 2030 and 2031. Those 2 years are going to be incredibly, incredibly important in the cycle of humanity. Because when we get to 2030, and I've always told you that I think we are on the path to 2030. When we get to those years, Saturn's going to be in Taurus. And every time Saturn is in Taurus, that fixed star, Aldebaran, in Taurus, opposing Antares in Scorpio, every time this happens, every 30 years, there are major shifts in humanity. Okay, things change. And, it's like a turning point. That's how I look at it. It's think of it as a Saturn return. Okay. If you go through a Saturn return, you know what I'm talking about. That's a turning point in your life. Yes, a lot of things end, but there are new beginnings. And the last time, and like I said, the research, right? We always do research to see what happened the last time. So the next time Saturn is in Aldebaran or in Taurus or in Rohini Nakshatra, you can call it that too, is going to be 2030 to 2031. 30 years before that, in 2001, when this happened, the 9/11 happened. And that gave rise to the long war with Afghanistan. 30 years before that was around the time of the Vietnam War and all of those issues that were happening. 30 years before that was World War II. 30 years before that was World War I, and so on. You can keep going back. Each time Saturn came to that position in Taurus, Rohini Nakshatra, Aldebaran fixed star, things happened. Major shifts in the way humanity or life here on this planet was affected. And in fact, if you go back to the Mahabharata, which a lot of you who know the Indian text Mahabharata, which, it's not, they say it's a story, it's mythology, but I truly believe it's itihasa or history. I do believe it happened because a lot of things that they talked about back then, it can be proved, right? By looking at the sky, it can be proved. So when the war was about to happen, Mahabharata war, which was fought between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and about 4 billion people died in that war. It was a huge destruction that happened. Before the war happened, the king summoned the astrologers or the sages back then, Vedavyasa was one of them, to the court and asked, is this a good time for a war? Will I have victory if the war is at this time? Well, the astrologers and the sages told the king that this will be a very difficult and destructive war because Saturn is in Rohini Nakshatra. Along with other pointers in the sky, that was one of the points that they mentioned. And what is Rohini Nakshatra? It's that star, Aldebaran, and it's opposing Antares. So whenever I talk about like predictions for monthly things and I talk about eclipses, I want you to always keep that big picture in mind that everything that's happening now, yes, it is affecting what is happening now on the planet, but it is weaving the tapestry of the bigger picture, which is going to end in those 2 years, 2030 and 2031, after which, again, things will go back. It'll reset, right? So now we are building up momentum to that point, and we'll reset after that. So keep that in mind. So now let's look at the chart and see what the month of September is going to bring for us. So first, before going forward, I want to remind you that I am a Vedic astrologer and I use sidereal degrees of the planets, not tropical. So if this doesn't make sense for your chart, then probably you're looking at the tropical or the Western zodiac. I use the sidereal zodiac. So let me first preface that little point. And with that being said, here we are on September 1st. Now, the first thing we will notice right off the bat is, Mercury. So right there on September 1st, Mercury is at 28 degrees of Cancer. What does that mean? It's Gandhanta. Remember, I've explained Gandhanta to you before. Anytime a planet is in the last few degrees of a water sign, which is Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. Anytime it's in the last few degrees of a water sign, it is called Gandhanta, which means drowning. So when planets are there, the energy of that planet is out of control, right? It's drowning. It's not able to get control on itself. And in your personal chart, you'll notice if anytime anybody has planets in those degree marks, they have experience of drowning too. It's not just in the case of world predictions. Even in personal charts, you will see those things happen. And it's a very treacherous degree. We start the month of September with Mercury being Gandhanta, 28 degrees. The next day on September 2nd, it's going to be at 29 degrees. So September 2nd and 3rd, it's really at that point of Gandhanta. which means it's a very tough placement for Mercury. Mercury being the planet that rules communications, internet, technology, media, things that are being said are not correct. There's a lot of fake news and fake things going around. Communications will not be good. So if you're in your personal life going to have a major discussion or some sort of meeting with somebody important, I would not do that on those 2 days, on September 2nd and 3rd, because it's Gandhanta. And like I said, when people have planets there, they do have experience of drowning. Like, for example, Whitney Houston had her Jupiter there, and, she died through drowning. And the Indian film star Sri Devi had her son in Gandhanta position. And of course, she also drowned, right? So a lot of examples are there. And these are just two of the ones that I can think of right off the top of my mind. But yes, the planets being in Gandhanta positions, even though that planet is considered in the highest degree, and it could probably be the Atma Karaka for the person, but still being Gandhanta, it's out of control because it's in a water sign, right? It's not in control of itself. So just remember this for the first 2 days of the month. As we go into September, this is going to be a little tough. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is the planet Mars. You see, Mars is at 3 degrees of Gemini, which means from the end of August to the beginning of September, Mars has moved from Taurus into Gemini. That's great because, like I said, Taurus has a lot of fixed stars which are very volatile, like Algol and Aldebaran, and of course, it's opposing Antares, and it's very tough zodiac sign in terms of volatility and the treachery, right? So when Mars or any kind of malefic planets like Saturn go through the sign of Taurus, it's never easy in the planet. And you saw that the past couple of months with Mars being in Taurus, that we had a lot of these unpredictable events around us, right? But now Mars goes from Taurus to Gemini, which, yes, we no longer have the energy of those treacherous fixed stars, but now we go into a whole new set of stars and nakshatras. Gemini, for the most part, is okay. The problem that I think would happen is when Mars goes into Ardra Nakshatra. And Ardra Nakshatra, remember the symbology. If you go back and watch my Nakshatra series, I made a whole video on Ardra Nakshatra. The symbology of Ardra is a teardrop. So, in that symbolic manner, it does indicate sadness and, people are unhappy about things. But because of that symbology of a teardrop or water, it also rules storms. So it's going to be very unpredictable weather in the coming 6 weeks while Mars is in Gemini. And also remember, with it being in Ardra Nakshatra, the ruler is Rudra, right? Rudra is a deity, and that's a god of storms. So a lot of times when this happens, when Mars goes into Ardra Nakshatra, there can be earthquakes, earth changes, storms. I know a lot of people have been predicting August to September, there's going to be a major earthquake. I agree with that too. And we already saw the likes of that in Japan and Los Angeles. I think there's going to be something bigger coming in the next couple of months. Now, the chart of United States comes to mind here because United States chart has many planets in Gemini. So the end of August to September, the whole month is going to be volatile for United States. Mars, like I said, doesn't do well in Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is wisdom, right? That's why Mars doesn't do well there, because Mercury is wisdom, Mars is aggression. Aggression and wisdom don't go well together, right? So that's the reason why Mars doesn't do really well in Gemini, just like it didn't do well in Taurus, which was ruled by Venus. So they're not compatible. Now, there can be a lot of aggressive mentalities around us. You can see riots. You can see people not happy about things. There'll be weather problems, earthquakes, and fires. Mars rules fires, okay? Now, around September 17th, Mars is going to cross that 17-degree mark, okay? Not 17, it's going to be around 13 degrees on September 17th. When Mars crosses that 13-degree mark, it will be exactly at the midpoint of the nodes, Rahu and Ketu. You notice Rahu and Ketu in Pisces and Virgo? The midpoint would be here exactly at 13 degrees of Gemini. And historically, we have seen through research, whenever Mars goes over the midpoint of the nodes, and also I want to add to that, United States has its Venus here at this degree mark, okay? And Venus in United States chart rules the 6th house of, aggression, fights, conflict, accidents, volatile. It's very volatile. And with Mars being at the midpoint of the nodes and transiting United States Venus, there is going to be a major issue that happens mid-September to the end of September. And this could have something to do with aggression and violence, okay? Or people are just upset, they're angry, there's, rage kind of things happening. Now, also, I want to add to this, because we are talking about the month of September and the end of September. I know I'm jumping forward a little bit because we are talking about Mars right now, but this is important for me to mention that at the end of September, when the lunar eclipse happens, and then after that, when the solar eclipse happens on October 2nd, it's going to be, in the sign of Virgo. And there are a lot of difficult planets sitting with the eclipse degrees, right? With the sun and the moon and the eclipse degrees, a lot of difficult planets. When I do my video on the eclipses, I'll talk a lot more in detail. But I do want to say that there is going to be a health crisis between October this year or September this year. October is the eclipse. So between October this year and April next year, so that 6-month period of eclipses, of the eclipse energy, of the eclipse cycle, there's going to be some kind of health crisis because Virgo rules health and healing. So just keep that in mind when we talk about all of this for September. Now, if you notice here, while we were looking at this Mars, we are in the energy of a new moon here. September 2nd is the new moon in the month of September. And this new moon, on a positive note, and I'm going to just move this to September 2nd, is in the nakshatra Purva Falguni. Now, Purva Falguni, again, this is the positive that I was going to bring up, because Purva Falguni nakshatra is a very, very beautiful nakshatra. It has to do with creative pursuits, creativity, art. You will notice that around you, a lot of artists and writers are inspired. There'll be a lot of new works coming out, movies coming out, TV shows, books, stories, all of those, the imagination, the inspiration is high because of this new moon being in Purva Falguni, because new moon is new beginnings. So people who are artists and writers will be really inspired during this time, or creators, right? Remember, this is creating anything. So it can be all the media and the movies, everything. So that's a good thing in the month of September with the new moon happening in Purva Falguni. I think that's definitely one of the positives that's happening. And, and that's around the time of the Labor Day too. So people are, happy around that time. There's family, people are getting together. That's good. Now, with that being said, with this new moon being here, look at who is aspecting it. Saturn is aspecting it from across the chart. Saturn opposes the new moon. And the sun, which is part of this new moon, is leaders and people in high positions. So Saturn aspecting on the new moon means that around the world leaders are facing that weight of Saturn, responsibility, burden, depression. The economy can be doing a little bad around this time too, because of the aspect of Saturn on the new moon. So, just remember that when we talk about that new moon. Now, Venus, the next planet that I want to talk about, is going to be, it's right here, and it is debilitated in Virgo almost through the month of September. On September 18th, it will move on into Libra, where it is in its own sign of rulership. So, you can see the dichotomy, the diverse nature of the month of September, because the first half of the month, Venus is debilitated, which means Venus rules relationships. So you want to be careful, if you're having relationship issues, or you're wanting to talk to your spouse or your partner about something, this is not a great time to have those discussions, because when Venus is debilitated, relationships are not doing great. And same thing with business partnerships, anything that is one-on-one with another person. So, wait till the September 18th, Venus moves on into Libra, relationships get better. So with that being said, let's look at what the mid part of the month looks like. So September 17th. So like I said, September 18th, Venus moves into Libra. But right before that, when Venus is at a 29-degree mark, and I do want to mention 29 degrees of Virgo is another fixed star called Spica. So this day on September 17th, you will see is good in terms of wealth, right? Because Venus is on that Spica. Spica is about fortune and wealth. So that's good. It's the breakthrough kind of fixed star. But what I wanted to mention is on the 17th and 18th, we will be in the energy of the lunar eclipse. So even though I'm making a separate video on that, I want to kind of touch on that a little bit since it's a month of September. And this lunar eclipse is very interesting because there are Rahu, Neptune, Moon all together here in Pisces. And then there will be the Sun, Ketu, and Venus, debilitated Venus, that too, here in Virgo. So this is an interesting lunar eclipse. You see, there are so many planets here, which are kind of tied up with this lunar eclipse. On top of that, you have Mars aspecting it, right? Mars is aspecting the lunar eclipse from here. And then you have Saturn in a 6-8 relationship. Although Jupiter is aspecting it, so that's a good thing. But there's just a lot of malefic energy, kind of, that I don't know how much good the Jupiter can do. I think the Jupiter-Venus trine is a positive during this time, which is good. But on top of that, you have all of these malefic energies too with this lunar eclipse. So first, let's talk about the positive. So with the eclipse being in the Virgo axis, Virgo-Pisces axis, and with the Jupiter-Venus trine happening, I do think that there's going to be some breakthroughs this month with health. Okay, there could be some new kind of medicine or cure of some way, or it could mean that people are looking at more spiritual and holistic ways to heal themselves with the Jupiter aspecting it. It's very spiritual, like energy healing, meditation, Reiki, Ayurveda, these kind of things. People could be going into those kind of healing modalities. So that's definitely a positive. But then we look at all these planets with Sun, Ketu, Moon, Rahu, Neptune, that too, retrograde Neptune, debilitated Venus, all tied up in this lunar eclipse, and Mars aspecting it. And Mars, remember, is still in Ardra at that time, right? It's sadness. It's all that heaviness of Mars and Ardra. So yes, there's going to be some storms around this time of the month, but another thing I want to talk about is the sign Virgo rules health matters. So this is why I was saying there's going to be a health crisis. The eclipse energy lasts for 6 months. So there will be some kind of health crisis during this time frame between October and April. Or it could be just that, there's a flu going on or some kind of, really bad virus going around. But the worst case is there could be a pandemic. Okay. Now, in your personal lives, the reason I'm kind of telling you about this is to make sure your immunity is strong. Because with these transits that are going on and the Neptune tied up with this, there is definitely some kind of hidden secrecy around this health crisis. So the only way we can protect ourselves from it is by making sure personally making sure that your health, your immunity is strong. And another thing is, remember I told you when Mars is in Ardra Nakshatra, it's exactly on the United States Venus. Venus rules the 6th house of health in the United States chart. It can be attacks too, but health as well. So this Mars being on that Venus and in the midpoint of the nodes, it's a time of destiny. This is a major event that's happening end of this month. And another thing, with this event, like I said, the eclipse energy lasts for 6 months. So it can go for 6 months to, before it's complete. But at the same time, We think that the lunar eclipse is like this. Maybe the solar eclipse will be better. It really doesn't get any better, because the solar eclipse, all these planets come into Virgo once again. And Virgo is again, it's the health and the healing and you may see with the sixth house energy that a lot of law kind of related things are coming up, because sixth house rules legal matters and law, legal representation. But on the other hand, conflict resolution, health crises, all of this. And this is basically, like I said, September 17th, going into October 2nd is the solar eclipse, which I'll make another video on that. And then the 6-month period after that. So this is definitely a time to watch and be careful with your immunity and your general health, because that's how you can overcome this crisis. Okay. With that being said, that's what I see in the month of September. I know it doesn't look great, but that's why I like to tell you when is the last time these things have happened. And as I said, every time the planets are moving cyclic, and we don't have any control on the planet's movement and what events it brings, but we have complete control on the way we handle it or we look at it. So that's why when I said there could be a health crisis, there could be some kind of virus or flu, the only way you can handle it is by making sure your immunity is strong. You're taking care of yourself. You're centered. You're strong within and outside, and take care of your family. That's all you can do. And when every one of us does this, these kind of events don't impact us at that much of a large scale. So I will see you next time with my next video. I'll be making a lot more videos from now on because of the nature of this intense coming 3-4 months. I want to make sure I give you as much information to be able to get through this time in a good way. Please make sure to subscribe and like. Thank you.